Star Trek kicked off as a short 3-year run, but somehow exploded into one of the most legendary sci-fi stories ever told after its 1966 debut on NBC. It followed the USS Enterprise and its crew on what was supposed to be a 5-year mission, but it got cut down to just 3, leaving fans wanting more in a big way. The show brought together a bold cast with William Shatner leading as the fearless Captain James T. Kirk, Leonard Nimoy as the cool and calculating Mr. Spock, and DeForest Kelley as the sharp-tongued Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy. Nichelle Nichols played the iconic communications officer Lieutenant Uhura. George Takei stepped in as helmsman Hikaru Sulu, and James Doohan powered the ship as Chief Engineer Montgomery Scotty Scott. Across 79 episodes, Star Trek struggled hard to pull in viewers, facing cancellation not once but twice before finally getting pulled off the air in 1969. Still, behind those shaky sets and tight budgets was a wild story packed with near shutdowns, borrowed religious symbols, a war hero hiding a real injury, sneaky behind-the-scenes money deals, and one studio boss who refused to let it all fall apart. Here are 10 shocking facts about Star Trek that change everything you thought you knew. Stick around for number 1, because it reveals how the Enterprise crew finally reached the stars decades after filming stopped. And before we jump to warp speed, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss these deep dives into classic TV that just won't fade away. Number 10, Lucille Ball refused to let this show die. Star Trek was this close to disappearing before a single episode ever aired. Back in 1965, NBC straight up rejected the first pilot, The Cage, leaving executives confused and the studio Desilu Productions seriously shaken. That could have been the end right there, but then Lucille Ball stepped in and flipped the whole situation. Lucy wasn't just a TV star, she owned Desilu, making her one of the most powerful women in Hollywood at the time. And when everyone else started backing away, she made a bold move that shocked her entire team. She decided to fund a second pilot using her own studio's money, even while her board of directors pushed back hard. Her accountants warned her that pouring cash into another expensive space project could drag the entire company down, but Lucy didn't fold under pressure. She gave it the green light anyway. Here's the wild part. There's a story that Lucy didn't even fully get what Star Trek was about at first. She reportedly thought it followed entertainers traveling overseas to perform for troops, and when someone finally explained it was about a spaceship and a pointy-eared alien, she still didn't back out. That second pilot turned into Where No Man Has Gone Before, and this time NBC said yes. Without Lucy making that risky call, there's no Enterprise, no Spock, no movies, no conventions, nothing. The entire Star Trek universe exists because one woman trusted her gut and overruled everyone who told her no. Number 9, the female first officer who got erased before the world even met Spock. Long before audiences stepped onto the Enterprise, the original 1965 pilot The Cage had a very different second in command, and it wasn't who you'd expect. Majel Barrett played a character known only as Number 1, and she wasn't just background, she was sharp, calm, and fully in control. She showed zero hesitation, zero emotional drama, and gave orders like it was second nature. But that confidence didn't sit well with the network at all. NBC executives pushed back hard, claiming audiences at the time wouldn't accept a woman giving orders to men, especially one who wasn't written to be soft or overly agreeable. On top of that, Barrett's real-life relationship with creator Gene Roddenberry made things even more uncomfortable behind the scenes. When NBC demanded a second pilot, Number 1 was quietly written out just like that. But here's where things get wild. Roddenberry didn't actually get rid of the character, he reshaped her completely. All of her defining traits, the cold logic, the emotional control, the sharp intelligence were handed directly to Spock. In fact, in that first pilot, Spock was way more emotional and reactive than fans would ever expect. It was only after the rewrite that he became the logical icon everyone knows, built from the foundation of Number 1. And Majel Barrett didn't disappear either. She returned as Nurse Christine Chapel, later married Roddenberry, and even became the voice of the Enterprise computer across multiple Star Trek series for the rest of her life. Number 8. Spock was almost bright red, and the network thought he looked straight up satanic. The character we all recognize today nearly came out looking completely different, and not in a good way. Gene Roddenberry originally planned for Spock to have red skin to make him feel more alien. Sounds bold, right? But the second they checked the test footage, that idea crashed fast. Most homes in 1966 were still using black and white TVs, and that red makeup turned into this weird muddy gray on screen. It didn't look futuristic at all. It just looked off. So that idea got scrapped, but NBC wasn't done worrying. Executives locked in on Spock's pointed ears and sharp eyebrows and started panicking, saying he looked too satanic for television. They were seriously concerned that religious viewers might react badly. It got so intense that early promo photos were actually edited to round out his ears and soften his features just to make him look more human. That's how unsure they were about the character. Then makeup artist Fred Phillips stepped in and switched things up with a yellow-green skin tone. It worked perfectly on set, but the drama didn't stop there. When the film went to processing, lab technicians kept fixing Spock's color back to normal pink because they thought something had gone wrong. This happened again and again because nobody believed a green-skinned officer was intentional. But once the show finally aired, audiences didn't see anything scary. They saw the breakout star of the entire series. Number 7, the Vulcan salute came from a secret childhood moment. That iconic live long and prosper gesture didn't start in a writer's room. It came from something much deeper and way more personal. Leonard Nimoy grew up in Boston, attending an Orthodox Jewish synagogue with his family. During a powerful religious blessing, the congregation was told to close their eyes or look away because a sacred presence was believed to enter the room. No one was supposed to watch, but young Nimoy couldn't resist sneaking a look. What he saw stuck with him for life. The priests held out their hands with fingers split into a V shape, forming a symbol tied to the Hebrew letter Shin, connected to one of the names of God. It was serious, ancient, and filled with meaning, and it burned into his memory. Years later, while filming the second season episode Amok Time, the script called for a Vulcan greeting. Instead of something random, Nimoy brought up that exact hand gesture from his childhood. He showed it to the director, and just like that, it was locked in on camera. No one on set fully realized it at the time, but that quiet decision turned into one of the most recognizable symbols in pop culture history. And here's the deeper twist. Nimoy later shared that one of his greatest joys was knowing fans across the world were unknowingly sharing a meaningful blessing every time they said, "Live long and prosper." Number 6, the kiss that had a network on edge in 1968. When Star Trek aired Plato's Stepchildren, it featured a kiss between William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols. And at the time, that moment sent shockwaves through NBC. Today it might seem simple, but back then, executives were seriously worried about backlash. They feared certain stations, especially in the South, might refuse to air the episode altogether. The pressure got so intense that NBC demanded a safer backup version of the scene. In that alternate take, Kirk and Uhura would lean in close, but never actually kiss. The studio thought this watered-down version could dodge controversy and keep everyone calm. But behind the scenes, something unexpected was happening. Nichelle Nichols later shared that she and Shatner had no intention of letting that happen. They reportedly sabotaged every single alternate take on purpose. They crossed their eyes, messed up their timing, and pulled goofy expressions just to make those versions unusable. On the final attempt, Shatner even looked straight into the camera, making sure the shot couldn't be edited cleanly. Time ran out, money ran out, and suddenly the only usable version left was the real kiss. NBC braced for outrage, expecting a flood of angry letters to pour in, but that backlash never showed up. Instead, they received a wave of positive responses, with many viewers confused about why it was ever a problem in the first place. The audience was already way ahead of the people trying to hold it back. Number 5, Scotty was a real-life war hero before he ever stepped into the engine room. Long before James Doohan became the legendary chief engineer of the Enterprise, he had already lived through something far more intense than anything on screen. Doohan served as a lieutenant in the Canadian Army during World War II and landed on Juno Beach in France on June 6, 1944. D-Day. Under brutal gunfire, he led his men straight through a minefield and even helped take out 2 enemy snipers. For most soldiers, that would have been more than enough for a lifetime. But his story didn't stop there. Later that same night, things took a shocking turn. While moving between command posts in the dark, a nervous Canadian sentry mistook him for the enemy and opened fire. Doohan was hit 6 times. 4 bullets tore into his leg, 1 destroyed his right middle finger, and the 6th shot was heading straight for his chest. That last bullet should have ended everything, but it didn't. It slammed into a silver cigarette case in his pocket, a gift from his brother, and stopped cold. That small object saved his life in a moment that feels almost unbelievable. He lost a finger, but he survived, and years later, he brought that same toughness to Star Trek. When he took on the role of Montgomery Scotty Scott, he carefully hid his injury using camera angles, hand positioning, and even a double for close-ups. He didn't want anything pulling viewers out of the story. Most fans never noticed a thing, but a few sharp-eyed viewers eventually caught it, especially in The Trouble with Tribbles, where his hand briefly appears buried under those fuzzy creatures. Turns out the man keeping the Enterprise running was easily one of the toughest people on set the entire time. Number 4, the tribbles that refused to disappear. The Trouble with Tribbles was supposed to be a light, funny episode, just harmless chaos with tiny fuzzy creatures taking over the Enterprise. On screen it looked cute and controlled, but behind the scenes it turned into pure madness. To create the illusion of thousands of tribbles, the prop team only made around 500 of them. They were simple little balls of fake fur stuffed with foam, and some even had small wind-up toy parts inside so they could wiggle across the floor. Cheap, clever, and honestly kind of adorable. But also a nightmare waiting to happen. Once filming wrapped, the real trouble started. The tribbles didn't leave. They kept popping up everywhere for weeks, hidden in lighting rigs, stuffed inside desk drawers, tucked into air vents, and buried in equipment cases. No one knew who put them there, and no one could stop finding them. DeForest Kelley even joked that the little fur balls kept appearing like weird surprises for an already worn-out crew. But it got worse, likely because the cast thought it was hilarious. Soon it turned into a full-on prank war, with tribbles being hidden in costumes, lunch bags, and random props. At one point, Kelley even snuck a tribble into a completely different scene and pulled it out of a patient just to crack everyone up. By then, the props weren't just multiplying. They were causing chaos on purpose, and that iconic avalanche scene, the one where Kirk gets buried under a mountain of tribbles, it took 8 takes to get right. Crew members above couldn't even see Shatner, so they just kept dumping more and more fur down to be safe. When everything finally wrapped, tribbles scattered everywhere. Some ended up in private collections, while others made their way into the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, where they're still sitting today, like they never left. Number 3. The fans who refused to let Star Trek die. Long before hashtags, viral posts, or online petitions were even a thing, this wasn't just support. It was a full-on movement powered by typewriters, stamps, and pure determination. In late 1967, word started spreading that NBC was ready to cancel Star Trek after its second season, but the fans weren't having it. Not even close. One dedicated fan and her husband kicked off a massive letter-writing campaign that quickly spiraled into something nobody at the network expected. They came up with a simple but powerful strategy called the Rule of 10. One fan writes a letter, then convinces 10 more people to do the same, and each of those people recruits 10 more. It spread fast, and suddenly NBC was getting buried under piles of mail every single day. The network admitted to receiving over 116,000 letters, but when you include petitions and bulk mailings, the real number may have been closer to 1 million. It got so overwhelming that NBC actually reversed course and renewed the show for a 3rd season during a live broadcast. They even had to politely ask fans to stop sending so much mail, and it didn't stop there. When the show was eventually canceled anyway, the fans came back even louder. College students at places like Caltech, MIT, and Berkeley held torchlight marches with signs reading, "It is totally illogical to cancel Star Trek." That energy didn't fade, it grew. By the 1970s, fans were pushing NASA to name its first space shuttle Enterprise. They kept the show alive through reruns, conventions, and non-stop demand until it finally returned as a feature film. Star Trek didn't survive because of the network. It survived because its fans refused to let it disappear. Their campaign set the blueprint for every fan movement that came after. Quick pause, if you're locked into this deep dive, hit like and subscribe before Scotty beams us up. Drop a comment and say which crew member you liked most growing up. Now let's jump back into the secrets and the wild legacy of the Starship Enterprise. Number 2, the theme song move that quietly made Roddenberry a fortune. The Star Trek opening theme sounds bold, epic, and unforgettable. And that's because composer Alexander Courage designed it that way on purpose. But behind that powerful music was a twist most viewers never heard about. Gene Roddenberry managed to collect half of the song's royalties for years without actually composing the music itself. Here's how it played out. Courage's contract included a standard rule from that era. If someone added lyrics to the theme, they could legally claim half the royalties every time it was used, and those royalties added up fast with every broadcast. So Roddenberry made a calculated move. He wrote lyrics for the theme, not to improve the song or put them on air, but to secure a share of the money. And those lyrics, they were never meant to be sung. Lines about love drifting through starlight made them feel more like a greeting card than a TV theme. He filed them anyway, and just like that, he became a co-writer in the eyes of the system. Every time Star Trek aired, half of what would have gone to Courage ended up going to Roddenberry instead. Courage was not happy about it at all. While the move was completely legal, he saw it as unfair, and it damaged their working relationship for good. He didn't return to score later seasons after that. Meanwhile, Star Trek kept growing. Reruns spread across the globe, new films were released, and the theme kept playing over and over. Those unused lyrics quietly generated millions over time for Roddenberry and eventually his estate. Number one, the Star Trek cast didn't just imagine space, they actually made it there. Gene Roddenberry spent his life dreaming up a future where humanity would travel the stars, and in a way that feels almost unreal. That vision came full circle after he was gone. The first step happened quietly in 1992. A small portion of Roddenberry's ashes was sent aboard the space shuttle Columbia, orbiting Earth before returning home. It was a simple but powerful tribute, arranged by his widow for a man who always looked toward the stars. But that was just the beginning. In 1997, things went even further when Roddenberry became part of the first ever memorial spaceflight open to the public. His remains were launched into orbit alongside counterculture icon Timothy Leary, an unexpected pairing that made the mission even more unusual. That capsule circled Earth for about 5 years before re-entering the atmosphere in 2002, burning up like a blazing shooting star. It felt less like reality and more like something written straight out of a sci-fi script. Then things took another turn. In 2008, a private space traveler carried a portion of James Doohan's ashes to the International Space Station, where they were kept inside one of its modules. Scotty himself made it into orbit, and the biggest mission yet, that came in January 2024. A company called Celestis launched a memorial flight aboard the Vulcan Centaur rocket, sending the remains of Gene Roddenberry, Majel Barrett, Nichelle Nichols, James Doohan, and DeForest Kelley beyond Earth's gravity and into orbit around the sun. Star Trek always promised a future among the stars, and decades later, the people who built that universe actually reached it themselves. Thanks for watching these 10 shocking facts about the original Star Trek. That Enterprise-level history gets wilder the more you look at it. This is the kind of sci-fi legacy that refuses to fade away. Which one caught you off guard the most? If this trip back to the Enterprise bridge brought back memories of late-night reruns or your first time watching the series, you're not alone. Even the smallest details from the crew still spark debates and nostalgia today. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who still throws up the Vulcan salute every chance they get. Share it around if you know someone who can still do the Vulcan salute on command. And until next time, keep watching $21.